It was supposed to be an ordinary day. Marcus Williams sat in his patrol car, sipping lukewarm coffee, filling out a routine report. But when he heard a soft knock on his driver's side window, he glanced up, and froze. A young girl, barely 10, stood there clutching a tattered doll. Her wide, solemn eyes locked on his, and when he rolled down the window to ask if she was okay, her 3 quiet words turned his world upside down. "You're my dad." It was a quiet afternoon as Lieutenant Marcus Williams sat in his patrol car, parked in a shaded corner near the city park. The hum of passing cars blended with the distant sounds of children playing, but Marcus was focused on his paperwork. 10 years on the force had made him accustomed to the routine, reports, patrols, and the occasional emergency call. He liked the order of it all, the way his work made sense in an otherwise unpredictable world. He was halfway through a report when he heard a light knock on his driver's side window. Startled, he looked up. Standing outside the car was a young girl, about 10 or 11 years old, wearing a simple blue dress that looked slightly worn. She was small and thin, clutching a tattered doll tightly in her arms. Her large, dark eyes stared up at him, a mix of fear and determination on her face. Lowering the window, Marcus gave her a curious but gentle look. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone soft so as not to scare her. The girl hesitated for a moment, her grip on the doll tightening. She took a deep breath, then looked him straight in the eyes and said, "You're my dad." Marcus froze, her words hanging in the air like a thunderclap. He blinked, certain he must have misheard her. "What did you just say?" he asked, his voice low, almost cautious. "You're my dad," the girl repeated, her voice steady this time, though her small hands trembled as she clung to the doll. Marcus stared at her, his mind racing. His first instinct was disbelief. This had to be some kind of mistake. He had no children, or at least, none that he knew of. And yet, as he looked at her, something about her seemed familiar. "Wait," he said, stepping out of the car. He crouched down to her level, trying to keep his voice calm despite the storm of questions swirling in his head. "Who are you? What's your name?" "Sky," she said quietly. "My mom told me to find you." Marcus's breath caught. "Your mom? Who's your mom?" "Her name was Layla," Sky said, her voice trembling now. "She said you're my dad. She said you didn't know about me. But, she told me to find you before she died." Marcus felt as though the ground beneath him had shifted. Layla. The name hit him like a lightning bolt. He hadn't thought about her in years, but he remembered her vividly, his first love, a whirlwind relationship that had ended over a decade ago. They had parted ways abruptly, and he hadn't heard from her since. Could it be true? Could this girl really be his daughter? "Wait," he said again, struggling to process what he was hearing. "Your mom, she's gone." Sky nodded, her lips quivering as she tried to hold back tears. "She got sick. She said I should come here and find you because you're a police officer." Marcus's chest tightened, a mix of emotions swirling inside him, shock, confusion, guilt. He had no idea this child existed, yet here she was, standing in front of him, looking at him as though he were the answer to everything. He stood up, running a hand over his face as he tried to think. "Okay," he said finally. "Sky, let's figure this out. Do you have somewhere safe to stay? Someone looking after you?" Sky shook her head. "No. I was staying with a lady from church, but she said she couldn't keep me anymore. That's when I came to find you." Marcus felt his heart break at her words. He didn't know what the truth was yet, but one thing was certain, this girl needed help, and she had come to him. Whether or not she was his daughter, he couldn't just walk away. "All right," he said, his voice firm but kind. "Let's get you somewhere safe. We'll figure this out together, okay?" Sky nodded, a flicker of relief crossing her face. Marcus opened the passenger door and helped her into the car, his mind racing with questions. Who was this girl? Was she really his child? And if she was, how could he have not known? As he started the engine, he glanced at her again, sitting quietly with her doll in her lap. Whatever the truth was, his life had just changed forever. As Marcus drove, the weight of Sky's words hung heavy in the air. He glanced at her in the passenger seat. She sat quietly, her small hands gripping the doll tightly, her eyes fixed on the view outside. She looked so small, so fragile, yet there was a quiet strength in the way she carried herself. Marcus's mind raced with questions, but he didn't know where to start. After a few minutes of silence, he spoke. Sky, he said gently, I'm going to ask you a few questions, okay? I just want to understand what's going on. She nodded, still not looking at him. Did your mom tell you much about me? He asked, keeping his voice calm. Sky shook her head. She just said you didn't know about me. That it wasn't your fault. But when she got sick, she told me I needed to find you because you'd take care of me. Marcus gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. He remembered Layla vividly now. They had dated briefly, years ago, when he was just starting out as a rookie cop. It was a passionate but short-lived relationship, and they had gone their separate ways without much closure. He'd always assumed their breakup was the end of the story. The thought that she might have been pregnant when they split, and never told him, made his stomach twist. How long ago did your mom pass away? He asked cautiously. 4 months ago, Sky said, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus felt a pang of guilt so sharp it nearly made him wince. This little girl had been on her own for months, navigating a world without the one person who had always been there for her. And now she was here, looking to him, a stranger, really, for help. Where have you been staying since then? He asked. With Miss Janine, Sky said. She was a friend of my mom's from church. She let me stay with her for a while, but she has a lot of kids. She said she couldn't take care of me anymore. Marcus nodded slowly, his chest tightening. The thought of Sky being shuffled around after losing her mother made his protective instincts kick in. Did you tell Miss Janine you were coming to find me? No, Sky admitted, her voice small. I didn't think she'd let me go if I told her. Marcus sighed, running a hand over his face. He was overwhelmed, but he knew he couldn't let her feel that. She needed him to be steady, to figure this out. Okay, he said finally. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take you somewhere safe tonight. Then we'll figure everything out, together. Sky glanced at him, her big eyes filled with uncertainty. Am I going to stay with you? She asked softly. The question hit him hard. He wanted to say yes, to reassure her, but he knew he couldn't make that promise yet. There were too many questions, too many unknowns. I don't know yet, Marcus admitted, his voice gentle but honest. But I'm not going to leave you. We'll figure this out, I promise. She nodded, her gaze dropping back to her lap. Marcus pulled into a diner parking lot, deciding they both needed a break. Inside, he guided her to a booth by the window and ordered her a sandwich and a milkshake. She ate slowly, barely touching the food, but he noticed how she kept glancing at him, as if trying to figure out if he was really someone she could trust. As they sat in silence, Marcus's phone buzzed. It was his colleague, Officer Ramirez. He hesitated before answering, glancing at Sky. Give me a second, okay, he said softly, stepping away from the table. Williams, Ramirez's voice came through the line. Where are you? You're still on shift, right? Yeah, Marcus said, lowering his voice. Something came up, Ramirez. I've got a situation. I'll explain later. Ramirez chuckled. You always get the weird ones, man. Just don't forget to file your reports. Marcus ended the call quickly, his mind already returning to Sky. As he walked back to the table, she looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. "Are you mad at me?" she asked suddenly. Marcus froze, surprised by the question. "Mad? No, Sky. Why would you think that?" She shrugged, looking down at her doll. "Because I came to find you. Maybe you didn't want me to." Marcus sat down across from her, leaning forward slightly. "Sky, listen to me. I'm not mad at you. I'm just trying to figure everything out. This is a surprise, but it's not your fault. You're incredibly brave for finding me, and I'm glad you did. I just need some time to make sure I do this right." She nodded, though her expression remained uncertain. After they finished at the diner, Marcus drove her to a safe house for children in temporary need of care. It wasn't a long-term solution, but he wanted to make sure she had a secure place to stay while he sorted through what to do next. As they pulled up to the building, Sky looked at him nervously. "Are you coming back?" she asked, her voice trembling. Marcus knelt down in front of her, meeting her gaze. "I'm coming back," he said firmly. "I promise. You're not alone anymore, Sky." She nodded, though tears glistened in her eyes. As she disappeared through the doors of the safe house, Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He had so many questions, but one thing was clear: his life had just changed forever. The next morning, Marcus sat at his kitchen table, staring at the DNA testing brochure he had picked up on his way home. His coffee sat untouched, the steam curling upward and dissipating into the air as his thoughts raced. Sky's words echoed in his mind, "You're my dad." The idea of being a father, something he had never once considered, felt overwhelming and surreal. And yet, something deep inside him couldn't ignore the possibility. He glanced at the clock. It was still early, but he couldn't sit idle any longer. Grabbing his keys, he headed out to visit the safe house where Sky had spent the night. When Marcus arrived, a social worker named Brenda greeted him in the lobby. She was a kind woman in her early 40s, with a calm demeanor that immediately put people at ease. "Lieutenant Williams," she said, extending a hand. "Sky told us you'd be back. She's been waiting for you." Marcus nodded, a faint sense of relief washing over him. "How's she doing?" "She's quiet," Brenda said. "But that's to be expected. She's been through a lot. She seems to trust you, though. That's a good sign." Marcus followed Brenda down a brightly lit hallway to a small common room. Sky was sitting on a couch, her knees tucked up to her chest as she watched a cartoon on the TV. When she saw Marcus, her face lit up briefly, but she quickly hid the smile and looked down at her doll instead. "Hey, kiddo," Marcus said, crouching down to her level. "How are you feeling?" "I'm okay," Sky said quietly. "Did you sleep all right?" She shrugged. "It's not like home." The words hit Marcus harder than he expected. She didn't have a home anymore, not really. And now she was looking to him for something he wasn't sure he could provide. "I talked to someone this morning," Marcus said, sitting down beside her. "We're going to do a DNA test to make sure. It'll take a little time, but it'll give us answers." Sky nodded but didn't say anything. "Hey," Marcus said gently. "No matter what the test says, I'm here. Okay? You're not alone in this." Finally, she looked up at him, her big eyes filled with uncertainty. "You promise?" Marcus placed a hand over his heart. "I promise." Over the next hour, Marcus filled out paperwork with Brenda and spoke to the staff about Sky's needs. He scheduled the DNA test for the following day, knowing it was the only way to get the confirmation they both needed. As they left the safe house, Marcus decided to spend the day with Sky. He wasn't sure what she liked or what would make her feel comfortable, but he wanted to get to know her. "Do you like pancakes?" he asked as they got into his car. Sky's face lit up for the first time, and she nodded. With syrup, she said. Deal, Marcus said, starting the car. They drove to a small diner Marcus often visited after shifts. Over pancakes and hot chocolate, Sky slowly began to open up. She told him about her favorite books, how her mom used to sing to her at bedtime, and how much she loved drawing. I don't have my crayons anymore, she said, looking down at her plate. Marcus made a mental note to pick some up for her later. After breakfast, they stopped by a local park. Marcus watched as Sky climbed the jungle gym and slid down the slides, her laughter ringing out like music. It was the first time she seemed carefree, even if just for a little while. As they sat on a bench afterward, Sky turned to him. Did you know my mom? Marcus hesitated. Yeah, I knew her, he said. A long time ago. She was special. She used to talk about you sometimes, Sky said. She said you were a good person. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. He hadn't been there for Layla or for Sky when they needed him most. But now, he had a chance to change that. When they returned to the safe house that evening, Sky seemed more relaxed. As Marcus said goodbye, she clung to him for a moment longer than he expected. You'll come back tomorrow? She asked. Marcus crouched down and met her eyes. I'll be here, he said firmly. I told you, we're figuring this out together. As he drove home, Marcus felt a strange mix of emotions: fear, hope, guilt, and an unexpected sense of connection. Sky's words from earlier stayed with him. She said you were a good person. He wasn't sure if he had lived up to that yet, but he knew one thing for certain: he was going to try. The following morning, Marcus woke up early, his mind restless with thoughts of the DNA test. The appointment was scheduled for later that day, but he couldn't shake the weight of uncertainty. He replayed every interaction with Sky over the past 2 days, her words, her expressions, and even the way she clung to her doll. Deep down, he felt a connection to her that he couldn't explain, but the logical side of him knew he needed proof. He needed the test to confirm what his heart was already beginning to believe. By mid-morning, Marcus arrived at the safe house to pick up Sky. She was waiting for him in the lobby, her small frame dwarfed by the oversized chair she was sitting in. When she saw him walk in, she stood quickly, clutching her doll. Hi, she said softly, a hint of a smile on her face. Hey, kiddo, Marcus replied, smiling back. You ready? She nodded, though her nervousness was clear in the way she shifted her weight from one foot to the other. As they drove to the clinic, the silence in the car was heavy. Marcus tried to ease the tension, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. You know, this is just a test. It's not scary or anything. They'll just swab the inside of your cheek, and that's it. Sky nodded, still gripping her doll tightly. What happens after? She asked hesitantly. Well, Marcus said, thinking carefully about his response, then we wait for the results. It'll take a few days, but once we know, we can figure out what's next. Sky didn't reply, but her small shoulders seemed to relax just a little. At the clinic, the process was straightforward. A nurse greeted them and led them into a quiet room. She explained how the test would work and handed Marcus and Sky separate swabs. Marcus went first, swiping the inside of his cheek and handing the swab back to the nurse. Sky watched him carefully, then followed his lead, her movements cautious but determined. You did great, Marcus said, smiling as the nurse sealed their samples in a small bag. As they left the clinic, Marcus decided they needed a distraction. He took Sky to a nearby bookstore, one he used to visit on his days off. When they walked inside, her eyes lit up at the sight of the colorful displays and shelves filled with books. You like to read, right? He asked. She nodded, wandering over to the children's section. Marcus followed her, watching as she picked up a book with vibrant illustrations of animals. My mom used to read this to me, she said quietly, running her fingers over the cover. Do you want it? Marcus asked. Sky looked up at him, surprised. Can I? Of course, he said. Pick out a couple more if you want. For the first time, a genuine smile spread across her face. She picked out 2 more books, clutching them tightly as they walked to the checkout counter. Later, as they sat on a park bench flipping through one of the books, Sky turned to Marcus with a question that caught him off guard. What if the test says you're not my dad? She asked, her voice small. Marcus froze for a moment, unsure how to respond. He placed the book down on the bench and looked at her. Sky, I don't know what the test will say. But I do know one thing, I'm not going anywhere. You came to me for a reason, and I'm here now. We're figuring this out together, no matter what. She nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. But when she leaned against him a few minutes later, resting her head on his arm, Marcus felt like he had said the right thing. That evening, after dropping Sky back at the safe house, Marcus sat alone in his apartment, staring at the now quiet space around him. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel peaceful, it felt hollow. He thought about the book Sky had picked out, the way her face lit up when she smiled, and the way she had leaned into him at the park. He didn't have all the answers yet, but one thing was becoming increasingly clear: Sky wasn't just a part of his past. She was quickly becoming a part of his future. Whatever the DNA test revealed, Marcus was ready to fight for her. The next few days passed slowly as Marcus waited for the DNA test results. Every hour felt like a small eternity, and he found himself overthinking every detail of his interactions with Sky. Her eyes, her mannerisms, the way she tilted her head when she was curious, it all felt strangely familiar. Yet, he forced himself to keep his emotions in check. He didn't want to let hope cloud his judgment, not until he had the truth in black and white. Marcus stayed busy during the wait, visiting Sky every day after his shifts. Each visit strengthened their bond, though the lingering uncertainty loomed over both of them. On one visit, he brought her a new box of crayons and a sketchpad. Sky's face lit up when she saw them, and she immediately started drawing. "What are you working on?" Marcus asked as he sat beside her at the small table in the safe house common room. "It's a picture of us," Sky said, her small hands carefully coloring in the page. "You and me. At the park." Marcus leaned over to look at her drawing. It was a simple, childlike sketch of 2 stick figures holding hands under a tree. One figure had a badge drawn on its chest. "You made me look pretty good," Marcus said with a soft chuckle. Sky smiled, her focus still on her work. "Do you think, if the test says you're not my dad, you'll still want to hang out with me?" she asked suddenly, her voice quiet. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. He reached over and rested a hand on her shoulder. "Sky, I meant what I said before. No matter what happens, I'm here. You're not alone, and you never will be." She nodded but didn't look up, her grip tightening on the crayon she was using. Marcus knew she was trying to protect herself, keeping her expectations low just in case the results weren't what she hoped. It broke his heart to see her doubt, but he couldn't blame her. She'd already lost so much. Finally, the day came when the DNA results were ready. Marcus received a call from the clinic while he was on shift. He pulled over to the side of the road, his hands trembling slightly as he answered. "Lieutenant Williams," the receptionist said on the other end of the line. "Yes, this is him," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite the nervous energy coursing through him. "We have your results. Would you like us to email them to you, or would you prefer to pick them up in person?" Marcus hesitated. He wasn't sure if he wanted to read the results alone or face them with Sky. After a moment, he decided. "I'll come by and pick them up." That evening, he arrived at the safe house with the sealed envelope in hand. Brenda, the social worker, gave him a knowing look as she led him to the room where Skye was waiting. Skye looked up from her sketchpad when Marcus walked in. Her eyes immediately went to the envelope in his hand. She set her crayons aside and stood, her small frame visibly tense. "Is that it?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "Yeah, this is it. Do you want to open it together?" Skye hesitated, then nodded. He sat down beside her at the table, carefully opening the envelope. His hands felt heavy as he pulled out the single sheet of paper inside. He scanned the text, his eyes locking on the words he had been waiting for. 99.9% probability of paternity. For a moment, Marcus couldn't speak. He let the words sink in, the reality of it washing over him like a wave. Skye was his daughter. The little girl who had knocked on his car window, who had looked up at him with those big, hopeful eyes, was his flesh and blood. Skye shifted nervously beside him. "What does it say?" she asked, her voice trembling. Marcus turned to her, his eyes softening. He placed the paper on the table and pulled her into a hug. "It says you're my daughter," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're my daughter, Skye." For a moment, Skye was still, as if she couldn't quite believe what she'd heard. Then she wrapped her arms around him tightly, burying her face in his chest. "I knew it," she whispered, her voice muffled. "I knew it." Marcus held her close, his heart full in a way he hadn't thought possible. All the doubts, the questions, the fears, they didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that Skye was here, and she was his. As they sat there, Marcus made a silent promise to himself and to her. He would do everything in his power to give her the life she deserved, to be the father she needed. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. For the first time in days, the weight on Marcus's shoulders felt lighter. The path forward wasn't entirely clear, but he knew one thing for sure: they were no longer alone. They had each other, and that was enough. The days following the DNA results felt like a whirlwind for Marcus. Confirming that Skye was his daughter brought a deep sense of responsibility, but also a flood of emotions he wasn't entirely prepared for. He couldn't stop replaying the moment when she hugged him, the relief and hope in her voice when she said, "I knew it." It was a moment that had changed him forever. Now, his priority was to give Skye stability and a sense of home. He had started the paperwork to officially become her legal guardian, but the process wasn't without its challenges. Social services needed to assess whether Marcus could provide a safe and nurturing environment, and he had to navigate their scrutiny while balancing his demanding job as a police officer. To prepare for the next step, Marcus rearranged his schedule. He asked his captain for more predictable shifts and even considered moving to a different department to avoid the long hours and high stress of patrol work. His colleagues were surprised by his sudden change, but most of them were supportive. "I didn't even know you had a kid," Ramirez said one afternoon as they wrapped up a shift. "I didn't either," Marcus admitted with a small laugh. "But now that I do, she's all that matters." "You're a good guy, Marcus," Ramirez said, clapping him on the shoulder. "You'll figure it out." That evening, Marcus picked Skye up from the safe house for what had become their new routine, spending time together after work. He had planned something special this time, wanting to show her that he was serious about making her feel at home. When she climbed into the car, her doll still clutched tightly in her hands, he smiled at her. "How do you feel about checking out my place today?" he asked. Skye's eyes widened slightly. "Your house?" "Yeah," Marcus said. "I thought you might like to see it. Maybe even help me figure out how to make it feel like home for both of us." She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Okay." The drive to his apartment was quiet, but not in an uncomfortable way. When they arrived, Marcus led her up the stairs and opened the door. The apartment was modest but well kept, with neutral tones and simple furniture. It was clear that Marcus had lived alone for a long time. There were no personal touches, no signs of warmth or family. "This is it," he said, gesturing around. "What do you think?" Skye walked in slowly, her eyes scanning the space. She lingered by the couch, running her hand over the armrest, then moved to the small dining table, where a framed photo of Marcus with his police academy classmates sat. "It's nice," she said softly. "But it doesn't look like a place for a kid." Marcus chuckled. "You're probably right. That's why I need your help. If you were to live here, what would you want to add?" Skye thought for a moment, then said, "Maybe some pictures. And colors. It's kind of boring." "Fair enough," Marcus said, laughing. "Pictures and colors. Got it." They spent the next hour brainstorming ways to make the apartment feel more like a home. Skye suggested a bookshelf for her books, a rug with bright patterns, and maybe even some plants. Marcus wrote everything down, surprised by how much he enjoyed hearing her ideas. When they finished, he opened the fridge and realized he hadn't prepared much for dinner. "How do you feel about pizza?" he asked. Skye grinned. "I love pizza." They ordered a large pepperoni pizza and sat together at the table, talking between bites. For the first time, Marcus saw Skye relax completely. She laughed at one of his stories about his rookie days as a cop, and she told him about the games she used to play with her mom. After dinner, Marcus walked her to the guest room he had hastily prepared earlier that week. It was simple, just a bed, a small dresser, and clean sheets, but he promised her it was only the beginning. "This is where you'll stay whenever you're here," he said. "We can decorate it however you want." Skye looked at him, her eyes shining. "Really?" "Really," Marcus said. "This is your space." She set her doll down carefully on the bed and turned to him. "Thank you," she said softly. "You don't have to thank me," Marcus said. "We're a team now, remember?" Skye nodded, then surprised him by giving him a quick hug. It was brief, but it spoke volumes. Marcus felt a lump in his throat as he hugged her back, realizing how much she had already come to mean to him. As the night wound down, Marcus sat on the couch after tucking Skye in, reflecting on how much his life had changed in such a short time. He wasn't just a cop anymore, or a man living alone in a quiet apartment. He was a father now, and that title meant more to him than he ever could have imagined. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still hurdles to overcome with social services, adjustments to make in his life, and the challenge of navigating fatherhood without any preparation. But as he glanced at the closed door to the guest room, where Skye was fast asleep, he felt a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a long time, Marcus knew exactly what he was fighting for. The following weeks were filled with adjustments, challenges, and small victories as Marcus and Skye settled into a new routine. While Skye was still staying at the safe house during the formal guardianship process, Marcus made sure to spend as much time with her as possible. Every evening after work, he would pick her up, and they would spend hours together, slowly building the foundation of their new life as a family. One Saturday morning, Marcus decided it was time to make good on his promise to personalize the apartment. Skye had been hesitant about the idea at first, worried that it might not feel permanent, but Marcus reassured her. "This is your home now," he said firmly. "So let's make it feel like yours." They started the day at a local home goods store, where Skye roamed the aisles, her wide eyes taking in the colorful options. Marcus followed behind her, pushing a cart and pretending to have strong opinions about which rug would look best in the living room. "What do you think of this one?" Skye asked, holding up a bright, patterned throw pillow. Marcus made a show of considering it, stroking his chin. It's a little too pink for me." Skye giggled, rolling her eyes. "It's not for you. It's for me." "Fair enough," Marcus said, tossing the pillow into the cart. "Pink it is." By the time they left the store, the cart was filled with everything from cheerful curtains to picture frames and even a small potted plant Skye had insisted they name. "We'll call it Charlie," she declared as they drove home. Once they got back to the apartment, they spent the rest of the day rearranging furniture, hanging up new decorations, and putting Skye's touches on every corner of the space. The once neutral walls were now adorned with colorful art and family photos Marcus had found in an old box. Skye's room, in particular, was transformed. She had chosen a bright yellow bedspread, a rug with stars on it, and a shelf where she carefully placed her books and the small plant. As they stood back to admire their work, Marcus couldn't help but smile. The apartment felt alive in a way it never had before. More than that, it felt like a home. "This looks amazing," Marcus said, turning to Skye. "You've got a real eye for decorating." Skye grinned. "It's not just your apartment anymore." "You're right," Marcus said. "It's ours." Later that evening, after they had finished cleaning up, Marcus cooked dinner. Well, he tried to. Skye watched from the kitchen table as he fumbled with a box of pasta, nearly spilling half of it into the sink. "You're not very good at this," she teased. "Hey, give me some credit," Marcus said, laughing. "I'm usually the takeout king. Cooking is a new skill." By the time the pasta was ready, it was slightly overcooked, but Skye didn't seem to mind. They sat at the table together, laughing about the kitchen mishaps and talking about what they would do the next day. For the first time, Marcus felt like they weren't just trying to make things work, they were thriving. As they finished eating, Skye hesitated before speaking. "Do you think my mom would have liked this?" she asked, her voice quiet. Marcus set down his fork, his expression softening. "I think she would have loved it," he said. "She'd be proud of you. And I hope she'd think I'm doing okay too." Skye nodded, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "She always said you were a good person." Marcus swallowed the lump in his throat, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "I'm trying, Skye. For you and for her." That night, as Marcus tucked Skye into her newly decorated room, she looked up at him with a small smile. "I like it here," she said. "It feels safe." "I'm glad," Marcus said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "This is your home now. Always." After she fell asleep, Marcus sat alone in the living room, the quiet hum of the city filtering through the window. The weight of his responsibilities hadn't lessened, but something about the apartment felt lighter now. It wasn't just a space, it was a reflection of the life he was building with Skye, one filled with color, warmth, and love. As he looked at the photos on the wall and the little plant named Charlie on the shelf, Marcus realized something. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel alone. He had Skye, and she had him. Together, they were creating something that neither of them had truly had before, a family. The day Marcus had been waiting for finally arrived, the guardianship hearing. It was the last step in making his bond with Skye official. Marcus had spent weeks preparing with the social worker, gathering proof of his ability to care for Skye, financial records, adjusted work schedules, and glowing letters from his colleagues about his character. But despite his preparation, he couldn't shake the nervous energy that gripped him as he walked into the courthouse. Skye stood beside him, her small hand wrapped around his. She was dressed in a bright yellow dress she had chosen herself, and Marcus thought she looked as brave as she had the first day they met. But even her brave exterior couldn't mask the nervous glances she kept shooting his way. "You okay, kiddo?" Marcus asked as they sat on a bench outside the courtroom. She nodded but didn't let go of his hand. "Do you think they'll say yes?" she asked quietly. Marcus knelt down to her level, looking her in the eye. "I think we've got this," he said, smiling. "But no matter what happens, I'm not going anywhere. You hear me? You're stuck with me now." That got a small giggle out of her, and she squeezed his hand tighter. When it was their turn to enter the courtroom, Marcus felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders. The judge, an older woman with a kind but serious expression, reviewed the files and asked questions about his readiness to take on the role of a full-time parent. Marcus answered honestly, explaining the changes he had made in his life to ensure stability for Sky. "I've adjusted my work schedule to make sure I'm home for her," he said. "I've set up a home environment where she feels safe and supported. And more than anything, I'm committed to giving her the love and care she deserves. She's my daughter, Your Honor, and I'll do whatever it takes to give her the life she deserves." The judge listened intently, occasionally glancing at Sky, who sat quietly by Marcus's side, clutching her doll. After what felt like an eternity, the judge spoke directly to Sky. "Sky," she said gently, "how do you feel about living with Marcus? Do you feel safe with him?" Sky looked up, her big eyes meeting the judge's. "I feel safe," she said firmly. "He makes me feel like I belong. I want to stay with him." The judge's face softened, and she nodded. "Thank you, Sky." After reviewing the documents one last time, the judge leaned forward. "Lieutenant Williams, based on your commitment, the evidence presented, and Sky's own wishes, I am granting you full guardianship. Congratulations." Marcus felt the breath he had been holding finally release. He turned to Sky, who was already smiling through tears. "We did it," he whispered, pulling her into a hug. As they left the courtroom, the weight of months of uncertainty lifted. Outside, the sun was shining, and Marcus looked down at Sky, who seemed lighter than he had ever seen her. "What do you want to do to celebrate?" Marcus asked as they walked to the car. "Can we go get ice cream?" Sky asked, her face lighting up. "Ice cream it is," Marcus said with a laugh. "Whatever you want, kiddo." Later, as they sat at a small table in an ice cream parlor, Sky with a cone piled high with chocolate and sprinkles, Marcus couldn't help but marvel at how far they had come. What had started as a knock on his car window had transformed into a bond he never could have imagined. Sky wasn't just a part of his life now, she was his life. That evening, back at the apartment, Marcus helped Sky hang a new drawing on the wall. It was another picture of the two of them, this time standing in front of their home with a big, bright sun shining overhead. She had written, "My family," at the top in colorful letters. As Marcus tucked her into bed, she looked up at him and said, "Thank you for finding me." Marcus smiled, his chest tight with emotion. "Thank you for finding me," he replied. As she drifted off to sleep, Marcus sat in the quiet living room, looking around at the home they had built together. It wasn't perfect, and there would still be challenges ahead, but for the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose and peace. He wasn't just a police officer anymore. He was a dad, and that was the title that meant the most to him. Sky had given him something he didn't even realize he was missing, a family, and he would never take that for granted. The ending of Marcus and Sky's story is a testament to the transformative power of love, resilience, and second chances. It's not just a tale of a man unexpectedly becoming a father, it's about the ways people can heal each other, even in the face of loss and uncertainty. Marcus, who had spent years focused solely on his career, discovered a deeper purpose in Sky, a child who reminded him that life is about connection and care, not just routine or duty. Sky's journey is equally profound. From losing her mother and navigating the instability of being passed between temporary homes, to finding a father she never knew, her story reflects the courage of a child who refuses to give up hope. Her trust in Marcus, even when the path forward was unclear, is a reminder that sometimes it only takes one person's belief in you to begin to rebuild. The ending isn't just happy, it's real. Marcus and Sky don't magically solve every problem, and their future won't be without its challenges. But their story is grounded in the beauty of persistence and the willingness to show up for one another, no matter what. The moments they share, celebrating small victories, transforming a sterile apartment into a home, and learning to be a family, are what make the conclusion so satisfying. It's a reminder that family isn't always about who you've known the longest, but who shows up when it matters most. Ultimately, the story leaves us with hope, that no matter how fractured life might feel, there is always the potential for healing, growth, and new beginnings.